A millionaire allowed a street boy to bring his mother to dinner at his restaurant when he saw. The glittering lights illuminated the sign Culinary Crown, a luxurious restaurant nestled in the heart of Chicago. This was the brainchild of Levi Taylor, a talented chef and successful entrepreneur. From the glass-walled office at the back of the restaurant, Levi could observe the entire elegant space with its pristine white tablecloths, gleaming silverware, and an atmosphere of sophistication. Levi, 33, with his neatly trimmed dark hair and sharp eyes, was reviewing a new menu. He ran his finger over the carefully written dish names, each one a culinary work of art. His restaurant wasn't just a dining establishment, it was a symbol of his journey from poverty to success. As Levi stood up and walked out of his office, he couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. Every detail in the restaurant, from the soft lighting to the subtle aroma of the dishes, was the result of years of tireless work and unwavering determination. Levi entered the kitchen, where the sounds of cooking and the fragrant smells of delicious food blended into a culinary symphony. Chefs and sous chefs worked in perfect harmony, each focused intently on their tasks. Levi smiled, remembering the days when he was a 15-year-old boy with a growling stomach, dreaming of standing in a kitchen like this. 18 years ago, Levi was a skinny boy wandering the narrow, bustling streets of his Chicago neighborhood. His parents had died when he was just a year old, leaving him in the care of his grandmother, Nora. She did what she could, but often the money was barely enough for basic necessities, and there were days when the pantry was nearly empty. On one such evening, when dinner had been little more than a thin broth, Levi felt disheartened. Sitting at the table with empty plates before them, he looked at his grandmother and said in a low voice, "Grandma, will it always be like this? Will we always struggle?" His grandmother took his hands in hers, warming them with her gentle touch. "My dear," she began, her gaze fixed on his eyes, "I know it's hard now, but you must believe that things will get better. Life tests us in ways we don't always understand, but it is our effort and our hope that guide us through the tough times. You need to work hard, study and dream. One day you'll see that your efforts were worth it." Inspired by his grandmother's words, Levi began to dedicate more time to his studies, especially cooking, which became his great passion. He spent hours in the kitchen with his grandmother, learning not only how to cook, but also how ingredients could be combined in creative ways to create dishes that were more than the sum of their parts. "And every dish you prepare tells a story, Levi. Never forget that," she instructed as she guided him through family recipes and her own inventions. Wow. These early lessons in the kitchen formed the foundation of Levi's love for cooking. "You are becoming a true chef," his grandmother praised, seeing Levi's progress. She knew that these skills would one day be his salvation, a means to change his life forever. "Remember, cooking can feed more than just the body. It can feed the soul and bring people together," she often said. These words echoed in Levi's mind, a constant reminder that his passion for cooking had the power to transform not only ingredients into dishes, but also his own life. As Levi stood in his state-of-the-art kitchen, surrounded by the fruits of his labor, he silently thanked his grandmother for those early lessons and the wisdom she had imparted. Her belief in him had been the catalyst for his success, and he was determined to use that success to make a difference in the lives of others, just as she had done for him. Levi's early years were marked by hardship and struggle. The small apartment he shared with his grandmother Nora was located in one of Chicago's less affluent neighborhoods. The walls were thin, the pipes often rattled, and the winter drafts seemed to find every crack and crevice. But despite these material shortcomings, the tiny home was filled with love and the tantalizing aromas of Nora's cooking. Nora Taylor was a woman of remarkable strength and resilience. Having lost her daughter and son-in-law in a tragic accident, she took on the responsibility of raising her grandson without hesitation. Her weathered hands, marked by years of hard work, were gentle when they caressed Levi's cheek or guided his small fingers as he learned to chop vegetables. "Levi, my boy," she would say, her eyes twinkling with a mixture of love and determination, "we may not have much, but we have each other, and we have the food we make with our own hands. That's something to be proud of. As Levi grew, he became acutely aware of the financial struggles they faced. There were nights when dinner was nothing more than a watery soup, stretched to its limit to fill their bowls. On those nights, Nora would regale Levi with stories of her youth, of the grand kitchens she had worked in as a young woman, and of the exotic ingredients she had encountered. These tales transported them both, momentarily alleviating the pangs of hunger and the weight of their circumstances. School was another challenge for young Levi. His worn clothes and often empty lunchbox made him a target for bullies. But Nora had instilled in him a quiet dignity and a fierce determination. "Your worth isn't in your pockets, Levi," she would remind him. "It's in your heart and your mind. Never let anyone make you feel less than you are." It was during one particularly difficult period, when Nora had fallen ill and couldn't work for several weeks, that Levi's passion for cooking truly ignited. At just 11 years old, he took it upon himself to manage their meager food supplies, stretching ingredients in ways he had seen his grandmother do countless times. One evening, as Nora lay in bed, weak but recovering, Levi surprised her with a meal he had prepared all on his own. It was a simple dish, a vegetable stew with dumplings, but he had poured all his love and worry for his grandmother into its preparation. Nora's eyes filled with tears as she tasted the stew. "Levi," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "you have a gift. This isn't just food, it's love made tangible. Never lose this passion, my boy. It will take you far." From that day forward, Levi threw himself into learning everything he could about cooking. He borrowed cookbooks from the library, watched cooking shows on their old television set, and experimented with whatever ingredients he could get his hands on. Nora, recognizing his talent and dedication, encouraged him every step of the way. As Levi entered his teenage years, their financial situation remained precarious. There were times when paying the rent seemed an insurmountable challenge. It was during one such moment of despair that Nora made a decision that would change both their lives. "Levi," she said one evening, her face etched with both worry and resolve, "I've been offered a job. It's good pay, but it's in another state. We'd have to move." Levi felt a mix of emotions, fear of the unknown, sadness at leaving the only home he'd known, but also a glimmer of hope for a better future. "Will there be a better kitchen?" he asked, trying to find something positive to focus on. Nora laughed, a sound that filled their small apartment with warmth. "Oh, my dear boy, yes, I believe there will be. And more importantly, there will be new opportunities for both of us." The move was hard, saying goodbye to the few friends he had made, packing up the meager possessions that held a wealth of memories. But as they boarded the bus that would take them to their new life, Levi felt a sense of adventure stirring in his heart. Their new home, while still modest, was an improvement. The kitchen, as promised, was indeed better. Levi spent hours exploring its nooks and crannies, imagining the dishes he could create in this space. It was in this new city that Levi's culinary journey truly began to take shape. A local community center offered free cooking classes, and Levi, with Nora's enthusiastic encouragement, signed up immediately. His talent quickly became apparent to his instructors, and soon he was being mentored by local chefs who saw in him a passion that reminded them of their own beginnings. As Levi's skills grew, so did his dreams. He began to imagine owning his own restaurant one day, a place where he could share the love and comfort he had always associated with food. Nora, watching her grandson flourish, felt a deep sense of pride and satisfaction. Despite all the hardships they had faced, she had managed to nurture not just Levi's body, but his spirit and his dreams. "Remember, Levi," she would say, her eyes shining with unshed tears of joy, "every great chef started somewhere. This is your somewhere. Make it count." And Levi, his heart full of love for his grandmother and passion for his craft, was determined to do just that. At the age of 15, Levi's life took another significant turn. His culinary talents had not gone unnoticed in the local community, and word of the young prodigy spread quickly. It was on a crisp autumn morning when Levi first met Penelope Clark, a respected chef and restaurateur in the area. Penelope had heard about Levi from one of the instructors at the community center and decided to see for herself what all the fuss was about. She arrived at the center during one of Levi's classes, quietly observing from the back of the room. Levi, unaware of the scrutiny, was lost in his element. His movements were precise, his focus unwavering as he expertly guided his classmates through the intricacies of preparing a complex French dish. Penelope watched, impressed not just by his technical skills, but by the way he connected with the other students, patiently explaining and encouraging. As the class ended and the other students filed out, Penelope approached Levi. "That was quite impressive," she said, her voice carrying a hint of a smile. "I'm Penelope Clark. I own a restaurant downtown, and I think you and I should talk." Levi, recognizing her name from the culinary magazines he devoured in his spare time, felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. "Thank you, Ms. Clark. I'm Levi Taylor. It's an honor to meet you." Penelope's restaurant, the Copper Pot, was a well-respected establishment known for its innovative take on classic cuisine. Over a cup of hot chocolate, for Levi and coffee, for Penelope, they discussed Levi's background, his passion for cooking, and his dreams for the future. "Levi," Penelope said, her eyes serious but kind, "I believe you have real talent. How would you like to work in my kitchen? It won't be easy, you'll start at the bottom, and I'll expect you to work harder than you ever have before. But if you're willing to put in the effort, I think you could have a bright future in this industry." Levi's heart raced at the opportunity. He thought of his grandmother, of all the sacrifices she had made for him. "Ms. Clark, I would be honored. I promise I'll work harder than anyone else in your kitchen." And so began Levi's formal entry into the world of professional cooking. The first few weeks were grueling. Levi started as a dishwasher, spending long hours up to his elbows in suds and scraps. But he approached even this mundane task with enthusiasm, understanding that every role in the kitchen was important. Penelope watched him closely, noting his unflagging energy and his eagerness to learn. She began to give him small tasks beyond dishwashing, chopping vegetables, preparing basic sauces, assisting the line cooks during busy periods. Levi soaked up every bit of knowledge he could. He arrived early each day to watch the prep cooks and stayed late to observe the cleaning and closing procedures. He peppered the other staff with questions, eager to understand every aspect of the restaurant's operations. Penelope's tutelage was strict but fair. She pushed Levi hard, recognizing in him a rare combination of raw talent and unwavering dedication. "Cooking isn't just about following recipes," she would tell him. "It's about understanding flavors, textures, and how they interact. It's about creating experiences for people, not just meals." As months passed, Levi's skills grew exponentially. He moved up from dishwasher to prep cook, then to line cook. His natural talent, honed by Penelope's guidance and his own relentless practice, began to shine. He started to develop his own recipes, infusing classic dishes with unique twists that reflected his personal experiences and creativity. One evening, nearly 2 years after Levi had started at the Copper Pot, Penelope presented him with a challenge. "Tomorrow night," she said, her eyes twinkling with anticipation, "you'll be in charge of creating the special. It's your chance to show me everything you've learned." Levi spent the night brainstorming, drawing inspiration from his grandmother's teachings and the skills he'd acquired under Penelope's tutelage. The next day, he arrived at the restaurant early, his mind buzzing with ideas. The special he created was a testament to his journey, a sophisticated reimagining of the simple vegetable stew he had once made for his grandmother. The dish was a hit, earning praise from both the regular patrons and a notable food critic who happened to be dining that night. Penelope, watching the positive reactions, felt a surge of pride. She called Levi into her office after the service. "You've come a long way, Levi," she said, her voice warm with approval. "I think it's time we start talking about your future in this industry." Over the next few years, Penelope became more than just a boss to Levi. She was a mentor, a friend, and in many ways, a second mother. She guided him through the intricacies of menu planning, restaurant management, and the fine art of balancing creativity with practicality in the kitchen. Levi, for his part, continued to excel. He won several local cooking competitions, further cementing his reputation as a rising star in the culinary world. His innovative dishes became a draw for the copper pot, attracting food enthusiasts from across the city. But more than just technical skills, Penelope instilled in Levi a deep respect for the art of cooking and the responsibility that came with it. "Remember, Levi," she would say, "when people come to eat at our restaurant, they're not just looking for food. They're looking for comfort, for excitement, for memories. Every dish we serve is an opportunity to create something meaningful." As Levi's 21st birthday approached, Penelope knew it was time for him to spread his wings. "You've outgrown this kitchen, Levi," she told him one evening after closing. "You have the talent and the drive to go far in this industry. I think it's time for you to explore other kitchens, other cities even. Learn from different chefs, experience different cuisines. It's the only way you'll truly grow as a chef." Levi felt a mix of excitement and sadness at the prospect of leaving the copper pot. "I don't know how to thank you for everything," Penelope said, his voice thick with emotion. Penelope smiled, her eyes glistening. "You thank me by going out there and becoming the best chef you can be. And someday, when you have your own restaurant, you'll pass on what you've learned to another young chef. That's how we keep this beautiful cycle of culinary art alive." With Penelope's blessing and a heart full of gratitude, Levi prepared to embark on the next chapter of his culinary journey, carrying with him the invaluable lessons and memories from his time at the copper pot. With a mix of excitement and trepidation, Levi packed his bags and set out to explore the culinary world beyond Chicago. His first stop was New York City, the bustling epicenter of diverse cuisines and cutting-edge gastronomy. The city's energy was intoxicating, and Levi found himself working in a series of high-profile kitchens, each offering new challenges and opportunities for growth. In a trendy Manhattan restaurant, Levi honed his skills in molecular gastronomy, learning to manipulate textures and flavors in ways he had never imagined. The head chef, a stern perfectionist, pushed Levi to his limits, often keeping him in the kitchen long after the last customer had left, experimenting with new techniques and flavor combinations. From there, Levi moved to a farm-to-table establishment in Brooklyn, where he gained a deep appreciation for seasonal, locally sourced ingredients. The restaurant's philosophy of sustainability and respect for produce resonated with Levi, reminding him of the lessons his grandmother had taught him about making the most of every ingredient. As his reputation grew, Levi received an offer to work in Paris, the heart of classical cuisine. The opportunity to immerse himself in the birthplace of many culinary techniques he had studied was too good to pass up. In Paris, Levi worked under a Michelin-starred chef, mastering the intricacies of French cuisine while also learning the finer points of running a world-class restaurant. The years abroad were transformative for Levi. He not only expanded his culinary repertoire, but also developed a keen business acumen. He learned about restaurant management, menu development, and the importance of creating a unique dining experience. All the while, he kept in touch with Penelope and his grandmother, sharing his experiences and seeking their advice. After 4 years of globetrotting and culinary exploration, Levi felt the pull to return home. He had absorbed a wealth of knowledge and experience, and now he was ready to bring it all together in a vision of his own. With the savings he had accumulated and a solid business plan, Levi returned to Chicago with dreams of opening his own restaurant. The process of establishing Culinary Crown was not without its challenges. Finding the right location, securing investors, and navigating the complex world of permit and regulations tested Levi's resolve. There were moments of doubt, nights spent poring over budgets and meanness, wondering if he had taken on more than he could handle. But Levi persevered, driven by the memory of his grandmother's encouragement and Penelope's unwavering belief in his potential. He wanted to create more than just a restaurant. He envisioned a place that would honor his roots while showcasing the global influences he had absorbed. The day Culinary Crown opened its doors was a moment of triumph for Levi. The restaurant's decor seamlessly blended elements of his childhood with sophisticated modern design, The menu was a reflection of Levi's journey, innovative dishes that paid homage to classic techniques while incorporating flavors and ingredients from around the world. Critics and diners alike were impressed by the young chef's vision. Reviews praised the restaurant's unique atmosphere and the bold, yet harmonious flavors of Levi's creation. Within months, Culinary Crown had become one of the most sought-after reservations in Chicago. As the restaurant's success grew, Levi remained grounded, never forgetting the lessons of his humble beginnings. He implemented a program to provide culinary training to underprivileged youth, remembering how his own life had been changed by the opportunity Penelope had given him. Levi also made it a point to source ingredients from local farmers and producers, supporting the community that had supported him in his early years. He regularly invited his grandmother to the restaurant, proudly showing her how far he had come and acknowledging that it was her early teachings that had set him on this path. 5 years after opening, Culinary Crown had firmly established itself as a culinary destination. Levi had achieved the success he had dreamed of as a young boy in his grandmother's kitchen. Yet, as he stood in his gleaming restaurant, surveying the bustling dining room and the efficient kitchen, Levi felt that his journey was far from over. He had created something remarkable, but he knew there was still more to learn, more to create, and more ways to give back to the community that had nurtured his talent. Little did Levi know that his life was about to take another unexpected turn, one that would challenge him in ways he had never anticipated and bring him full circle in his culinary journey. On a chilly autumn morning, as the streets of Chicago bustled with the usual weekday rush, a small figure huddled in the shadow of a building across from Culinary Crown. This was Hudson, a 12-year-old boy with tousled brown hair and eyes that seemed too old for his young face. His clothes, though clean, were worn and a size too small, hinting at the struggles he faced daily. Hudson had been coming to this spot for the past week, selling homemade sweets from a small, battered box he carried. His eyes darted between passers-by in the gleaming windows of the restaurant, watching as well-dressed patrons entered and exited, their faces content after enjoying luxurious meals. The boy's story was one of sudden misfortune and resilience. Just a year ago, Hudson's life had been different. He lived with his parents in a modest but comfortable apartment, attended school regularly, and even took part in after-school activities. His father, James, had been a hard-working construction worker, while his mother, Penelope, worked part-time at a local diner. Everything changed when James was involved in a severe accident at a construction site. The injuries he sustained were catastrophic, leaving him unable to work and requiring constant care. The medical bills quickly mounted, draining the family's savings. Despite Penelope's best efforts to keep them afloat, working extra shifts and taking on additional jobs, they found themselves spiraling into poverty. The strain took its toll on James, who, unable to cope with the pain and the drastic change in his circumstances, turned to prescription painkillers for relief. What started as a legitimate need for pain management soon spiraled into addiction. The once loving and attentive father became a shadow of his former self, his days consumed by the pursuit of his next dose. Penelope, watching her husband's descent and struggling to make ends meet, fell into a deep depression. The vibrant, hopeful woman who had once filled their home with laughter and the aroma of delicious meals became withdrawn and listless. The kitchen, once a domain of creativity and joy, stood silent and unused. It was in this atmosphere of despair that Hudson found himself thrust into a role far beyond his years. With his father lost in a haze of addiction and his mother barely able to function, Hudson took it upon himself to try and help. He started by selling small trinkets he made from discarded materials found in the neighborhood. When that proved insufficient, he turned to what he remembered best from happier times, his mother's baking. Using the few ingredients he could scrape together and following recipes he recalled watching his mother make countless times, Hudson began creating simple sweets to sell. And each morning he would rise before dawn, quietly preparing his wares in the kitchen that had once been filled with his mother's culinary magic. Today, as Hudson stood in his usual spot, his box of sweets was still nearly full. Sales had been slow. and he fought against the gnawing worry in his stomach. He knew that at home, the cupboards were nearly bare and the threat of eviction loomed ever closer. As he watched the door of Culinary Crown open once again, Hudson couldn't help but dream. He imagined a world where his family could enjoy a meal in such a place, where his father was healthy and working again, where his mother's eyes sparkled with joy as they once had. But reality quickly reasserted itself as a cold gust of wind reminded him of his current situation. Hudson pulled his thin jacket tighter around himself and picked up his box of sweets. With determination beyond his years, he approached another potential customer, his voice strong despite his circumstances. "Would you like to buy some homemade sweets? They're really good, I promise." Little did Hudson know that his persistence was about to catch the eye of someone who would change the course of his life, and in doing so, set in motion a series of events that would intertwine his fate with that of Levi Taylor in ways neither could have imagined. The crisp autumn air nipped at Levy's face as he approached Culinary Crown for another day of work. His mind was already racing with menu ideas and the day's tasks when a small figure caught his eye. A young boy, no more than 12 or 13, was attempting to sell something to passers-by, most of whom hurried past without a second glance. Levi slowed his pace, watching as the boy approached person after person, his shoulders slumping a little more with each rejection. There was something about the child's determination that struck a chord with Levi, reminding him of his own struggles as a youth. As Levi drew closer, he could hear the boy's pitch. "Would you like to buy some homemade sweets? They're really good, I promise." The words were delivered with a mix of hope and desperation that tugged at Levy's heart. Making a decision, Levi changed course and approached the young vendor. "Hello there," he said, crouching down slightly to meet the boy's eyes. "What kind of sweets do you have?" The boy's eyes widened in surprise, clearly not used to someone taking an interest. "I have chocolate chip cookies, sir," he replied, his voice gaining a bit of enthusiasm, "and some caramel squares. They're my mom's recipe." Levi nodded approvingly. "Those sound delicious. I'm Levi. What's your name?" "Hudson, sir," the boy replied, a small smile forming on his face. "Well, Hudson, I'd love to try your sweets. How much for one of each?" As Hudson fumbled with his box to retrieve the treats, Levy took a moment to really look at the boy. His clothes were clean but worn, and there was a weariness in his young eyes that spoke of hardships no child should have to face. Levi paid for the sweets, intentionally overpaying and waving away Hudson's attempt to give him change. As he bit into the cookie, Levi was surprised by its quality. It wasn't professional grade, but there was a homemade charm to it that brought back memories of his grandmother's kitchen. "These are quite good, Hudson," Levi said sincerely. "You made these yourself?" Hudson nodded, a hint of pride breaking through his tired demeanor. "Yes, sir, my mom taught me how," but he trailed off, a shadow crossing his face. Levi's instincts, honed by years in the kitchen and his own experiences, told him there was more to Hudson's story. He gestured towards Culinary Crown. "You know, I own that restaurant over there. How would you like to come inside for a bit? Maybe have something warm to drink. You look like you could use a break." Hudson hesitated, years of being told not to trust strangers warring with the genuine kindness he saw in Levy's eyes. I don't know. I should keep trying to sell these." Levi nodded understandingly. "I tell you what, why don't you come in for a little while, and then if you'd like, you can try selling to the people leaving the restaurant later. They might be more inclined to buy something sweet after a good meal." This logic seemed to convince Hudson, and he nodded slowly. "Okay, I guess that would be all right." As they entered Culinary Crown, Levi noticed Hudson's eyes widening at the elegant decor. He guided the boy to a quiet corner table, away from the curious glances of the staff and early diners. "Hot chocolate," Levi offered, and at Hudson's nod he signaled to one of the waitstaff, "And bring a plate of the breakfast pastries as well, please." As they waited for the order, Levi gently probed for more information. "So, Hudson, do you do this often? Selling sweets?" Hudson fidgeted with the edge of the tablecloth. "Most days, sir. After school and on weekends." "And your parents?" "They're okay with this." A flicker of pain crossed Hudson's face. "My dad, he's sick, And my mom, she tries, but it's hard for her. I just want to help." Levi's heart ached at the boy's words, recognizing the weight of responsibility that Hudson carried. It reminded him all too clearly of his own childhood struggles. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of the hot chocolate and pastries. Levi watched as Hudson took a tentative sip, a look of pure delight crossing his face at the rich, creamy taste. As Hudson ate, Levi found himself growing increasingly concerned about the boy's situation. He knew all too well how quickly things could spiral out of control for a family facing hardships. "Hudson," Levi said gently, "I'd like to help if I can. Would it be all right if I spoke with your mother sometime?" Hudson looked up, a mix of hope and wariness in his eyes. You want to help us?" Levi nodded. "I do. You see, when I was about your age, I was in a tough situation too. Someone reached out and gave me a chance, and it changed my life. I'd like to do the same for you and your family, if you'll let me." Hudson was quiet for a moment, considering. Then, with a small nod, he said, "Okay, I think my mom would like that." As they finished their impromptu breakfast, Levi felt a sense of purpose he hadn't experienced in years. He didn't know exactly how yet, but he was determined to help this young boy and his family. Little did he know that this decision would lead to a reunion that would shake the foundations of his carefully built world. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over Chicago's bustling streets, Levi found himself pacing nervously in his office at Culinary Crown. He had arranged for Hudson to bring his mother to the restaurant that evening, hoping to discuss how he could help their family. The anticipation of meeting Hudson's mother and potentially making a significant difference in their lives filled Levi with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. The restaurant was quieter than usual, as Levi had reserved a secluded corner for this important meeting. He had instructed his staff to provide the utmost care and discretion, wanting Hudson and his mother to feel comfortable and welcome. As the clock struck 7, Levi's attention was drawn to the restaurant's entrance. He saw Hudson first, the boy's face a mixture of nervousness and hope, and then, as if in slow motion, a figure emerged behind him, a woman Levi hadn't seen in years, yet would recognize anywhere. "Penelope," Levi whispered, his voice barely audible as shock coursed through his body. Indeed, it was Penelope Clark, his former mentor, the woman who had shaped his culinary career and in many ways his life. But this Penelope was a far cry from the confident, vibrant chef he remembered. She looked frail, her once bright eyes dulled by exhaustion and worry. Her clothes, like Hudson's, were clean but worn, hanging loosely on a thin frame. For a moment, Levi stood frozen, his mind struggling to reconcile the Penelope of his memories with the woman before him. Then, as if pulled by an invisible force, he moved towards them. "Penelope," he said again, louder this time, his voice thick with emotion. "Is it really you?" Penelope's eyes widened in recognition, a mix of surprise, joy, and shame flashing across her face. "Levi? Levi Taylor?" she breathed, her voice barely above a whisper. Hudson looked between them, confusion evident on his young face. You know each other?" he asked, his voice small and uncertain. Levi nodded, still unable to take his eyes off Penelope. "Yes, Hudson. Your mother, she taught me everything I know about cooking. She's the reason I'm standing here today, in my own restaurant." Penelope's eyes filled with tears as she took in the elegant surroundings of Culinary Crown. "Oh, Levi," she said, her voice cracking with emotion. "Look at what you've accomplished. I'm so proud of you." The moment was interrupted by a gentle cough from one of the waitstaff. Levi snapped back to the present, suddenly aware that they were still standing in the entrance. "Please," he said, gesturing towards the reserved table, "let's sit down. We have so much to talk about." As they settled into their seats, an awkward silence fell over the table. Levi's mind raced with questions, but he struggled to find the right words. It was Hudson who finally broke the silence. "Mr. Levi," he began hesitantly, "you said you wanted to help us. Does that offer still stand, even though you know my mom?" Levi's heart clenched at the worry in the boy's voice. "Of course it does, Hudson," he assured him. "In fact, knowing your mother only makes me want to help more." He turned to Penelope, his eyes full of concern. "Penelope, what happened?" The last I heard, you were running the copper pot. How did you end up in this situation?" Penelope's shoulders sagged as if the weight of her story was a physical burden. "It's a long and not very pleasant tale, Levi," she said softly. "Are you sure you want to hear it?" Levi reached across the table, gently taking Penelope's hand in his. "I do. Please tell me everything." And so, as the evening wore on and plates of exquisitely prepared food sat largely untouched before them, Penelope recounted the series of events that had led to her current circumstances. She spoke of meeting Hudson's father, James, and falling deeply in love, of how his charm and dreams had swept her off her feet, convincing her to leave Chicago and the copper pot behind. "I thought I was embarking on a great adventure," Penelope said, her eyes distant with memory. "James had such grand plans for us. We were going to open our own restaurant, start a family. For a while, it seemed like everything was falling into place. But then came the accident that left James unable to work." Penelope described the mounting medical bills, the strain of caring for James while trying to keep their dreams alive. She spoke of James's descent into addiction, her voice breaking as she recounted how the man she loved disappeared into a haze of painkillers and despair. "I tried to hold everything together," Penelope said, wiping away a tear. "I picked up extra shifts, took on catering jobs, but it wasn't enough. The bills kept piling up, and James," she trailed off, glancing at Hudson, who was listening with a maturity beyond his years. Levi listened, his heart breaking for the woman who had once been so strong, so full of life. He couldn't help but think of how different things might have been if they had stayed in touch, if he had known what was happening. As Penelope's story came to a close, a heavy silence fell over the table. Levi's mind whirled with emotions, shock at Penelope's circumstances, anger at the unfairness of it all, and an overwhelming desire to help. "Penelope," Levi finally said, his voice filled with determination, "I want you to know that you're not alone anymore. Whatever you need, a job, a place to stay, help with Hudson's education, I'm here for you, both of you." To Penelope's eyes filled with fresh tears, but this time there was a glimmer of hope in them. "Levi, I don't know what to say. You don't owe me anything. What I did for you all those years ago, it was because I believed in you. And now it's my turn to believe in you," Levi replied firmly. "You gave me a chance when I was just a kid with nothing but dreams. Let me return the favor." "Son, the favor." Hudson, who had been quietly absorbing the conversation, suddenly spoke up. "Does this mean we don't have to worry about being evicted, and that I don't have to sell sweets on the street anymore?" Levi turned to the boy, his heart swelling with affection and admiration for this young soul who had borne so much responsibility. "That's exactly what it means, Hudson. From now on, things are going to get better, I promise." As the reality of Levi's offer sank in, Penelope let out a sob of relief, years of pent-up stress and worry finally finding release. Levi moved to her side, enveloping both Penelope and Hudson in a comforting embrace. In that moment, surrounded by the warm glow of Culinary Crown, a new chapter began for all three of them. Levi knew that the road ahead would not be easy, that there would be challenges to overcome and wounds to heal. But he was determined to help Penelope and Hudson rebuild their lives, just as Penelope had once helped him build his. As they sat there, united by a shared past and the promise of a brighter future, Levi couldn't help but marvel at the twists of fate that had brought them to this point. He silently vowed to honor the second chance they had been given, to repay the kindness that had shaped his life by extending that same kindness to others. The reunion of mentor and student, now in reversed roles, marked the beginning of a journey that would challenge them all, test the bounds of forgiveness and resilience, and ultimately redefine the meaning of family. In the days following their emotional reunion at Culinary Crown, Levi arranged for Penelope and Hudson to move into a comfortable apartment near the restaurant. As they settled into their new surroundings, Penelope found herself grappling with a mix of gratitude for Levi's generosity and shame at the circumstances that had led her to this point. One evening, after Hudson had gone to bed, Penelope sat with Levi in the small but cozy living room of their new home. The weight of her past hung heavily in the air, and she knew it was time to share the full story of her descent from successful chef to struggling single mother. It all started about 7 years ago, Penelope began, her voice soft and tinged with regret. I was at the height of my career. The Copper Pot was thriving, and I had just been featured in a national culinary magazine. That's when I met James. Levi listened intently as Penelope described James, a charming, ambitious man who had swept into her life like a whirlwind. He was a real estate developer with dreams of creating a chain of high-end restaurants across the country. He talked about combining my culinary expertise with his business acumen. Penelope continued. It seemed like the perfect partnership both professionally and personally. I was so caught up in the excitement of it all that I ignored the red flags. Those red flags, as Penelope now recognized, included James's tendency to make grandiose promises and his cavalier attitude towards financial risks. But blinded by love and the allure of a new adventure, she had agreed to sell the Copper Pot and move with him to a new city to start their venture. The first year was wonderful, Penelope said, a faint smile playing on her lips as she remembered happier times. We got married, and I became pregnant with Hudson. James was attentive and loving, and our plans for the restaurant were coming together. I thought I had it all. But their dream began to unravel even before it fully took shape. The location James had chosen for their restaurant fell through, and their initial investors pulled out. Stress began to creep into their relationship, exacerbated by the challenges of new parenthood. James became increasingly frustrated, Penelope recalled, her voice tightening. He started taking bigger risks, borrowing money from questionable sources. I tried to rein him in, but he accused me of not believing in him, of not supporting his vision. The turning point came when Hudson was just over a year old. James had been working long hours on a construction site, trying to secure a new location for their restaurant. It was there that tragedy struck. I got the call in the middle of the night, Penelope said, her eyes clouding with the memory. James had fallen from scaffolding. The doctors said he was lucky to be alive, but the damage to his spine was severe. The accident changed everything. James's dreams of entrepreneurship were shattered along with his body. The medical bills began to pile up, and the debts James had accrued in pursuit of their restaurant venture came due. I tried to hold everything together, Penelope continued, her voice barely above a whisper. I took any job I could find, line cook, caterer, even waitressing. But it was never enough, and James, he changed. The pain of his injuries and the bitterness of his dashed dreams led James down a dark path. What began as a legitimate need for pain management quickly spiraled into addiction. At first I didn't want to see it, Penelope admitted, shame coloring her words. I made excuses for his mood swings, for the way the prescriptions seemed to disappear faster and faster. I told myself he just needed time to adjust, to heal. But as months turned into years, the reality of their situation became impossible to ignore. James's addiction consumed him, transforming the man she loved into someone she barely recognized. There were moments of clarity, Penelope said, tears welling in her eyes. Times when the James the first fell in love with would shine through. He'd promised to get help, to be the husband and father we needed. But those moments never lasted. The cycle of hope and disappointment took its toll on Penelope. She described the constant stress of trying to make ends meet while caring for both Hudson and James, the shame of having to ask friends for loans, of watching her culinary skills be reduced to flipping burgers in a diner. The worst part, Penelope said, her voice cracking, was watching Hudson grow up in that environment. He was such a bright, loving child, but I could see the toll it was taking on him. The confusion in his eyes when James would have one of his outbursts, the way he'd try to comfort me when I thought he was asleep. As their financial situation worsened, they were forced to move to increasingly run-down neighborhoods. Penelope's world shrank, her dreams of culinary greatness replaced by the day-to-day struggle for survival. I lost touch with everyone from my old life, she admitted, partly because I was so busy just trying to keep us afloat, but also because I was ashamed. I couldn't bear the thought of anyone from the culinary world seeing what had become of me. The final straw came when James's addiction led him to steal money that Penelope had painstakingly saved for Hudson's school supplies. The confrontation that followed was ugly, with James lashing out verbally and physically. "I knew then that I had to get Hudson out of there," Penelope said, her voice gaining strength for the first time in her narrative. "It wasn't safe anymore, and I couldn't let my son grow up thinking that was normal." With nothing but a small suitcase of clothes and the last of their savings, Penelope took Hudson and left in the middle of the night, and made their way back to Chicago, the only place Penelope could think of where they might be able to start over. But starting over was harder than I imagined, Penelope concluded, the weariness evident in her voice. "My skills were rusty, my confidence shattered, and the culinary world moves fast. No one was interested in hiring a chef who'd been out of the game for years." As Penelope's story came to an end, a heavy silence fell over the room. Levi sat stunned, trying to process the magnitude of what Penelope had endured. The strong, confident woman who had mentored him had been brought low by circumstances beyond her control, yet had found the strength to protect her son and seek a better life. "Penelope," Levi finally said, his voice thick with emotion, "I can't even begin to imagine what you've been through, but I want you to know something." He leaned forward, making sure to meet her eyes. "Your strength, your resilience, that's the Penelope Clark I remember. The woman who taught me that no matter how hard things get, you never give up." Penelope's eyes welled with fresh tears, but there was a glimmer of her old self in them, a spark of the determination that had once defined her. "Thank you, Levi," she said softly, "for listening, for not judging, and for giving us this chance. I promise you I'm going to make the most of it." As the night wore on, Levi and Penelope continued to talk, beginning the process of rebuilding their relationship on this new foundation of shared understanding. The road ahead would not be easy, but with the bonds of their past strengthened by the trials of the present, they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The following morning, Levi woke early, his mind still processing the weight of Penelope's story. As he prepared for the day ahead, he found himself filled with a mixture of emotions: compassion for what Penelope and Hudson had endured, anger at the circumstances that had brought them so low, and a fierce determination to make things right. Over a cup of strong coffee in his kitchen, Levi began to formulate a plan. He knew that simply providing Penelope and Hudson with a place to stay wasn't enough. They needed a way to rebuild their lives, to regain the stability and dignity they had lost. As he arrived at Culinary Crown, Levi called a meeting with his management team. "I need your help with something important," he began, his voice firm with resolve. He explained the situation, careful to maintain Penelope's privacy while conveying the urgency of their needs. "Penelope Clark was once one of the most respected chefs in Chicago," Levi told them. "She gave me my start in this industry, and now it's our turn to give back. I want to create a position for her here at Culinary Crown." His team listened attentively, some nodding in understanding, others looking skeptical. Levi anticipated their concerns and addressed them head-on. "I know what you're thinking," he said. "She's been out of the industry for years, but I assure you talent like hers doesn't just disappear. With some time and support, Penelope can be an invaluable asset to our team." After some discussion, it was agreed that they would create a role for Penelope as a culinary consultant. She would start by working on menu development and staff training, areas where her experience and creativity could shine without the immediate pressure of running a kitchen. With that settled, Levi turned his attention to Hudson. He reached out to contacts at some of Chicago's best schools, explaining the boy's situation and seeking advice on how to enroll him mid-year. It took some negotiation and a generous donation to the school's scholarship fund, but by the end of the day, Levi had secured a place for Hudson at a prestigious private school known for its supportive environment and excellent academic programs. That evening, Levi visited Penelope and Hudson in their new apartment. The sight of them still adjusting to their surroundings, Penelope looking lost and Hudson cautiously hopeful, strengthened Levi's resolve. "I have some news," Levi announced after they had settled in the living room. He turned to Penelope first. "I've created a position for you at Culinary Crown. It's a consulting role focusing on menu development and staff training. You can start whenever you feel ready." Penelope's eyes widened in surprise and then filled with tears. "Levi, I don't know what to say. Are you sure? It's been so long since I've worked in a professional kitchen." Levi reached out and took her hand, his grip firm and reassuring. "I'm absolutely sure. Your talent and knowledge are still there, Penelope. We'll take it slow, give you time to readjust. But I have no doubt that you'll be an incredible asset to the restaurant." He then turned to Hudson, who had been listening intently. "And for you, young man, I have some news too. You'll be starting at Lakeside Academy next week. It's one of the best schools in Chicago." Hudson's jaw dropped. "Really? But how? Don't those schools cost a lot of money?" Levi smiled warmly. "Don't worry about that. It's all taken care of. Your job is to focus on your studies and make the most of this opportunity. Can you do that?" Hudson nodded vigorously, a genuine smile breaking across his face for the first time since Levi had met him. Penelope, overwhelmed by Levi's generosity, began to sob quietly. "Levi, this is too much. We can't possibly accept all this." Levi's expression turned serious. "Penelope, listen to me. What you're going through now doesn't define you. It's a chapter in your story, but it's not the end. You gave me a chance when I was just a kid with nothing but dreams. Now it's my turn to do the same for you and Hudson." He leaned forward, his voice filled with conviction. "This isn't charity. It's an investment in two incredibly resilient people who deserve a fresh start. All I ask is that when you're back on your feet, you pay it forward. Help someone else who needs it, just like you once helped me." As the reality of Levi's words sank in, Penelope's sobs turned to laughter, a sound of relief, gratitude, and hope. Hudson, caught up in the emotion of the moment, threw his arms around both Levi and his mother. In that embrace, Levi felt the weight of responsibility, but also the warmth of connection. He knew the road ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges, setbacks, and moments of doubt, but he was committed to seeing this through, to helping Penelope and Hudson rebuild their lives. As he left their apartment that night, Levi felt a sense of purpose he hadn't experienced in years. He had achieved his dreams of culinary success, but now he was embarking on something even more meaningful, the chance to transform lives, just as his own had once been transformed. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity as Levi's plans for Penelope and Hudson's new life began to take shape. However, the transition was not without its challenges, and it quickly became apparent that the road to recovery would be longer and more complex than any of them had initially anticipated. For Penelope, the first hurdle was addressing her health issues. Years of stress, poor nutrition, and neglect had taken their toll, and Levi insisted on a full medical checkup before she started work at Culinary Crown. The results were sobering. Penelope was severely anemic, showed signs of early-stage osteoporosis, and was diagnosed with clinical depression. "We need to get you healthy before you can even think about stepping into a kitchen," Levi said gently as they sat in the doctor's office reviewing the results. Penelope nodded, her face a mixture of shame and resignation. Levi arranged for Penelope to see a team of specialists, including a nutritionist, a physical therapist, and a psychologist. The treatment plan was intensive, requiring daily medications, therapy sessions, and a carefully monitored diet and exercise regimen. At first, Penelope resisted, feeling overwhelmed by the scope of her health issues. "Maybe this is a mistake, Levi," she said one evening, her voice trembling. "I'm broken. Maybe I can't be fixed." Levi's response was firm but compassionate. "You're not broken, Penelope. You're healing, and healing takes time. We're in this together, remember." Slowly, with Levi's constant encouragement and Hudson's unwavering support, Penelope began to embrace her treatment. Each small improvement, a good night's sleep, a meal eaten without anxiety, a therapy session that left her feeling lighter, became a victory to be celebrated. Meanwhile, Hudson faced his own set of challenges as he prepared to start at Lakeside Academy. The stark contrast between his new school and his previous educational experiences was daunting. The curriculum was more advanced, the expectations higher, and the social dynamics entirely foreign to him. The day before Hudson was due to start, Levy found him sitting alone in the apartment, staring blankly at his new school uniform. "What's on your mind, buddy?" Levi asked, sitting down next to him. Hudson's voice was small when he replied, "What if I'm not smart enough? What if the other kids make fun of me because I'm different?" Levy's heart ached at the vulnerability in Hudson's words. He put an arm around the boy's shoulders. "Hudson, listen to me. You are incredibly smart. You've faced challenges that most of those kids couldn't even imagine. That resilience, that strength, that's your superpower." Encouraged by Levi's words, Hudson started school with a mixture of trepidation and excitement. The first few weeks were tough. He struggled to keep up with the coursework, particularly in math and science, where his previous schooling had significant gaps. Levi hired a tutor to work with Hudson after school and on weekends, helping him catch up. He also reached out to Hudson's teachers, explaining the boy's background and asking for their patience and support. One evening, about a month into the school year, Hudson came home with tears in his eyes. "I failed my math test," he confessed, his voice choked with disappointment. "Maybe I'm just not cut out for this school." Penelope, who had been having a good day, rose to the occasion. She sat with Hudson at the kitchen table, going over the test questions one by one. "You know," she said, a spark of her old self shining through, "math is a lot like cooking. It's all about following the recipe and understanding how different ingredients, or in this case numbers, work together." From that day on, Penelope began to take a more active role in Hudson's education, her own recovery seemingly accelerated by the need to be there for her son. She worked with the tutor to develop math problems related to cooking and restaurant management, making the abstract concepts more concrete for Hudson. As weeks turned into months, both Penelope and Hudson began to show signs of progress. Penelope's health improved steadily, her eyes regaining some of their old spark. She started joining Levi at Culinary Crown for short periods, familiarizing herself with the kitchen and the staff. Hudson's grades began to improve, and he even made a few friends at school. One day he came home bursting with excitement. "Mom, Levi, I got an A on my science project," he announced, waving the paper proudly. The project had been about the chemistry of cooking, combining his newfound academic knowledge with his family's culinary background. Levi, watching this transformation, felt a deep sense of satisfaction. But he also knew that there were still challenges ahead. Penelope, while improving, still had days when the weight of her past threatened to overwhelm her. And Hudson, despite his progress, sometimes struggled with feelings of inadequacy and fear of failure. One evening, as they all sat around the dinner table, a nightly ritual that Levi had instituted to provide stability and togetherness, Penelope suddenly put down her fork and looked at Levi with tears in her eyes. "I don't know if I've said this enough," she began, her voice thick with emotion, "but thank you, Levi, for believing in us when we couldn't believe in ourselves, for giving us this chance." Levi reached out and squeezed her hand. "You don't have to thank me, Penelope. Seeing you both grow and overcome these challenges, that's all the thanks I need." Hudson, watching this exchange, added his own thoughts. "Yeah, thanks, Levi. You're like the dad I never really had." A lump formed in Levy's throat at Hudson's words. He hadn't expected to form such a deep bond with the boy, but somewhere along the way, Hudson had found a place in his heart. As they continued their meal, talking and laughing together, Levy realized that in helping Penelope and Hudson, he had gained something precious too, a sense of family and purpose that went beyond his success in the culinary world. The road ahead was still long, with many challenges yet to face. But as Levy looked at Penelope and Hudson, he felt confident that together they could overcome whatever obstacles lay in their path. The healing had begun, and with it, the promise of a brighter future for all of them. As Penelope's health improved and Hudson settled into his new school routine, the time came for her to take her first steps back into the professional culinary world. Levi had prepared the staff at Culinary Crown for Penelope's arrival, emphasizing her expertise and the valuable contributions she could make to the restaurant. However, the reality of reintegrating into a high-pressure kitchen environment proved more challenging than anyone had anticipated. On her first day, Penelope arrived at Culinary Crown an hour early, her hands shaking slightly as she tied on her apron. Levi met her at the employee entrance, offering a reassuring smile. "Ready?" he asked gently. Penelope took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. "As I'll ever be," she replied, a mix of determination and anxiety in her voice. As they entered the kitchen, the bustling energy hit Penelope like a wave. The clanging of pots, the sizzle of pans, the rapid-fire communication between chefs, it was all at once familiar and overwhelming. For a moment she froze, doubt clouding her features. Levi, noticing her hesitation, placed a hand on her shoulder. "Take it slow," he murmured. "Remember, you're here as a consultant. Observe, offer suggestions when you're comfortable. There's no pressure." Penelope nodded, grateful for his understanding. She spent that first day watching the kitchen operations, making mental notes but rarely intervening. The staff, while polite, seemed unsure how to interact with her. Some of the younger chefs whispered among themselves, clearly wondering about this new addition to their team. As the days passed, Penelope gradually began to find her footing. She started offering suggestions on menu items, drawing from a vast experience to propose innovative twists on classic dishes. Some of her ideas were well received, particularly by Levi, who recognized the spark of creativity that had made Penelope such a formidable chef in her prime. However, not everyone was as welcoming. Marcus, the head chef who had been running the kitchen since Culinary Crown's opening, began to view Penelope's presence as a threat. He had worked hard to establish his authority in the kitchen, and Penelope's arrival and Leva's clear respect for her opinions made him feel undermined. One afternoon, as Penelope was discussing a new appetizer idea with one of the line cooks, Marcus intervened. "We don't have time for experiments," he snapped. "We have a full house tonight, and we need to stick to the established menu." Penelope, taken aback by his tone, tried to explain. "I wasn't suggesting we change anything for tonight. I was just disrupting my kitchen," Marcus interrupted. "If you want to play around with recipes, do it on your own time." The exchange left Penelope shaken. She retreated to the small office Levi had set up for her, fighting back tears of frustration and self-doubt. When Levi found her there an hour later, she was ready to quit. "Maybe this was a mistake," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm out of practice, out of touch. I'm just getting in the way." Levi listened patiently, then shook his head. "No, Penelope, you belong here. Your ideas are brilliant, and this kitchen needs your expertise. Give it time." Despite Leva's encouragement, tensions continued to simmer. Marcus, feeling threatened, began to subtly undermine Penelope's suggestions. He would implement her ideas but alter them, just enough to claim them as his own. Other staff members, sensing the conflict, began to take sides. The situation came to a head during a particularly busy Saturday night service. Penelope had suggested a new plating technique for the restaurant's signature dish, which Levi had enthusiastically approved. As orders flooded in, Marcus reverted to the old plating style without informing Penelope. When Penelope noticed, she confronted Marcus in the middle of the kitchen. "Why aren't you using the new plating?" she demanded. Marcus, stress and resentment boiling over, lashed out. "Because this is my kitchen and I make the decisions here. Your glory days are over, Penelope. Why don't you just accept that and stop trying to relive the past?" The kitchen fell silent, all eyes on Penelope. For a moment, she stood frozen, Marcus's words cutting deep into her insecurities. Then, to everyone's surprise, she straightened up, her eyes flashing with a fire that had long been dormant. "You're right about one thing, Marcus," she said, her voice low but clear. "My glory days in the kitchen might be behind me, but that doesn't mean I don't have value to offer. I've forgotten more about cooking than you've ever known." She turned to address the entire kitchen staff. "I know I'm new here, or rather, I'm old and new at the same time. I know some of you wonder why I'm here. The truth is, I'm still figuring that out myself. But I do know this: cooking isn't just about following recipes or sticking to what's safe. It's about passion, creativity, and constantly pushing yourself to be better." Penelope picked up a knife, her movements sure and confident for the first time since she'd returned to the kitchen. Now, who wants to learn how to elevate this dish from good to unforgettable? The kitchen remained silent for a beat, then one of the younger chefs stepped forward. "I do," she said simply. Gradually, others joined her, forming a circle around Penelope as she began to demonstrate her technique. Marcus, realizing he was losing his audience, stormed out of the kitchen. Levi, who had witnessed the entire exchange from the doorway, let him go. He knew he would need to address the situation, but for now, he wanted to let Penelope have this moment. As he watched her guide the staff through her process, Levi saw glimpses of the Penelope he remembered, confident, passionate, and utterly in her element. The staff, initially skeptical, began to engage enthusiastically, asking questions and offering their own insights. By the end of the night, the energy in the kitchen had shifted. The new plating technique had been a hit with customers, and even some of Marcus's staunchest supporters had to admit that Penelope's approach had improved the dish. As the last of the staff filed out, Penelope approached Levi, exhaustion and exhilaration warring on her face. "I'm sorry about the scene with Marcus," she began, but Levi held up a hand to stop her. "Don't apologize," he said firmly. "What you did tonight, that's exactly why I wanted you here, Penelope. You didn't just teach them a technique, you reminded them what it means to be passionate about cooking." Penelope smiled, a genuine, confident smile that Levi hadn't seen since her return. "It felt good," she admitted. "For the first time in years, I felt like me." Levi nodded, squeezing her shoulder gently. "This is just the beginning, Penelope. There will be more challenges, more conflicts. But tonight proved that you still have so much to offer. Are you ready to really dive in?" Penelope took a deep breath, looking around the kitchen, her kitchen, in a way she hadn't allowed herself to feel before. "Yes," she said firmly, "I'm ready." As they left the restaurant that night, both Levi and Penelope knew that a corner had been turned. The road ahead would still have its bumps, but Penelope had rediscovered her voice, her passion, and in doing so, she had taken a crucial step, not just in her professional recovery, but in reclaiming her sense of self-worth. The true journey of rebuilding Culinary Crown's kitchen culture, and Penelope's place within it, was only just beginning. While Penelope was finding her footing in the culinary world once again, Hudson was facing his own set of challenges at Lakeside Academy. Despite his initial progress and the few friends he had made, the stark difference in his background compared to his wealthy classmates became increasingly apparent, leading to a difficult situation. It started subtly at first, sideways glances, whispered comments, and exclusion from social gatherings. Hudson tried to brush it off, focusing instead on his studies and the friends who had accepted him. But as weeks passed, the situation escalated. One day, during lunch period, Hudson sat alone at his usual table, his homemade lunch spread out before him. A group of boys from his class approached, led by Tyler, the son of a prominent Chicago businessman. "Hey, charity case," Tyler called out, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "Where'd you get those clothes? The dumpster behind Goodwill?" Hudson felt his face flush with embarrassment. His clothes, while clean and well-maintained, were clearly not the designer brands his classmates wore. He tried to ignore the comment, but Tyler wasn't finished. "You know, my dad says people like you shouldn't be allowed in schools like this. You're just lowering the standards for everyone else." The words stung, bringing tears to Hudson's eyes that he desperately tried to blink away. He thought about all the hard work he'd put in to catch up with his classmates, the long hours of tutoring, and the encouragement from his mom and Levi. But in that moment, all he felt was shame and a deep sense of not belonging. As Tyler and his friends laughed and walked away, Hudson lost his appetite. He packed up his untouched lunch and spent the rest of the break hiding in a bathroom stall, trying to compose himself before his next class. The bullying continued over the next few weeks, growing more frequent and cruel. Hudson's grades began to slip as he struggled to concentrate in class, constantly on edge and expecting the next taunt or prank. He became withdrawn at home, picking at his food and spending more time alone in his room. Penelope and Levi noticed the change in Hudson's behavior, but initially attributed it to the stress of adjusting to a new, more challenging academic environment. It wasn't until Hudson's teacher called Penelope to express concern about his falling grades and increasing absenteeism that they realized something more serious was going on. That evening, Levi joined Penelope and Hudson for dinner, determined to get to the bottom of the issue. As they sat around the table, the tension was palpable. "Hudson," Penelope began gently, "your teacher called today. She's worried about you, and frankly, so are we. What's going on, sweetie?" Hudson stared at his plate, pushing his food around with his fork. "It's nothing," he mumbled. "School's just harder than I thought." Levi leaned forward, his voice soft but firm. "Hudson, we know you're smart and hardworking. This isn't just about the schoolwork, is it? Are you having problems with the other kids?" At Levi's words, Hudson's composure cracked. Tears welled up in his eyes as the story came pouring out, the taunts, the exclusion, the constant feeling of being an outsider. "They say I don't belong there," Hudson choked out between sobs. "That I'm just a charity case lowering the standards. Maybe they're right. Maybe I should just go back to my old school." Penelope rushed to embrace her son, her own eyes filling with tears. "Oh, Hudson," she murmured, stroking his hair. "I'm so sorry you've been going through this alone. But listen to me, those kids are wrong. You belong at that school just as much as anyone else." Levi, his jaw clenched with anger at what Hudson had endured, joined the embrace. "Your mom's right, buddy. You've earned your place at Lakeside through hard work and determination. I don't let anyone tell you differently." As Hudson's sobs subsided, Levi and Penelope exchanged a look of silent communication. They knew they needed to address this situation head-on, not only for Hudson's sake, but to ensure that other students wouldn't face similar treatment. "Tomorrow," Levi said decisively, "we're going to speak with the principal. This bullying stops now." Hudson looked up, a mix of hope and fear in his eyes. "But what if it makes things worse? What if they hate me even more for telling?" Penelope cupped her son's face in her hands. "Hudson, standing up against injustice is never the wrong choice. He'll be right there with you, every step of the way." As they continued to talk late into the night, making plans and offering reassurances, Hudson felt a weight lifting from his shoulders. For the first time in weeks, he allowed himself to believe that things could get better. The road ahead would not be easy. Confronting the bullies and changing the school culture would be a challenge. But as Hudson looked at his mother and Levi, he knew he wasn't facing this alone anymore. With their support, he found the courage to face another day at Lakeside Academy, determined to prove that he did indeed belong. As Penelope and Hudson began to overcome their immediate challenges, a shadow from the past loomed on the horizon, threatening to unravel the fragile stability they had achieved. It began with an unmarked envelope delivered to Culinary Crown, addressed simply to Penelope Clark. Levi, who had been sorting through the day's mail, felt a sense of unease as he handed the envelope to Penelope. She opened it with trembling hands, her face paling as she read its contents. "Penelope," Levi asked, concern evident in his voice, "what is it?" She looked up, her eyes wide with fear. It's about James, my ex-husband. There's more to his story than I told you." Over the next hour, in the privacy of Levy's office, Penelope revealed a part of her past she had kept hidden out of shame and fear. James, it turned out, hadn't just been a failed entrepreneur and addict. In his desperation to fund their restaurant dreams and later his addiction, he had become involved with a criminal organization known as the Syndicate. He started small, Penelope explained, her voice barely above a whisper. Just moving money at first. But as his debts grew, so did his involvement. By the end, he was deeply entangled in their operations. The letter, sent by an anonymous source, warned that the syndicate hadn't forgotten about just Ms. debts they now expected Penelope to pay. They threatened to come after her and Hudson if she didn't comply. Levi listened, his mind racing. "Why now?" he asked. "Why are they coming after you after all this time?" So Penelope shook her head, tears forming in her eyes. "I don't know. Maybe they've just now tracked us down. Or maybe," she paused, a look of realization crossing her face. "Maybe it's because of you, Levi. Because I'm associated with a successful restaurant again." The implications of her words hung heavy in the air. Levi's success, his attempts to help Penelope and Hudson, had inadvertently put them in danger. "We need to go to the police," Levi said firmly. But Penelope shook her head vigorously. "No, we can't. The syndicate has connections everywhere. If they find out we've talked to the authorities, they might—" She couldn't finish the sentence, the fear for her son evident in her eyes. As they debated their next move, neither of them noticed the figure lurking in the shadows outside Levi's office, Marcus, the head chef, who had overheard every word of their conversation. Over the next few weeks, a tense atmosphere settled over Culinary Crown. Levi hired discreet private security to keep an eye on Penelope and Hudson, while also quietly reaching out to contacts in the restaurant industry for any information on the syndicate. Penelope, racked with guilt and fear, threw herself into her work, as if trying to prove her worth not just to the restaurant but to herself. Her innovative dishes and mentorship of the younger chefs earned a growing respect in the kitchen, but the constant fear of the syndicate's threats cast a shadow over her achievements. Hudson, unaware of the danger, continued to face his own challenges at school. Levi and Penelope did their best to shield him from their worries, but the boy was perceptive enough to sense that something was amiss. The situation came to a head one evening when Levi was working late at the restaurant. As he prepared to leave, he found Marcus waiting for him in the parking lot. "We need to talk," Marcus said, his voice low and urgent. Levi, wary of Marcus's recent behavior, nodded cautiously. "What about?" Marcus looked around nervously before speaking. "It's about Penelope and the syndicate. I overheard your conversation, and I think I might be able to help." Levi's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" Marcus took a deep breath. "Before I came to work for you, I had some connections. People who might know how to deal with organizations like the syndicate." The implications of Marcus's words were clear. Levi felt a mix of anger at the invasion of privacy and cautious hope at the possibility of a solution. "Why would you help?" he asked. "You've made it clear you don't want Penelope here." Marcus had the grace to look ashamed. "I was wrong about her," he admitted. "Seeing her work these past weeks, how she's inspired the team, I realized I let my ego get in the way of recognizing true talent. And besides," he added, his voice hardening, "nobody deserves to live under that kind of threat, especially not a kid like Hudson." Levi studied Marcus for a long moment, weighing his options. Finally, he nodded. "All right, tell me what you know." As they talked, a plan began to form. It was risky, involving a complex sting operation to expose the syndicate's operations to law enforcement without directly implicating Penelope or Hudson. It would require careful coordination, absolute secrecy, and a great deal of trust, something Levi wasn't sure he could fully extend to Marcus. But as the nights wore on and the plan took shape, Levi began to see a different side of his head chef. Marcus's street smarts, combined with his newfound respect for Penelope, proved invaluable in navigating the treacherous waters they found themselves in. Penelope, when finally told of the plan, was initially resistant. "It's too dangerous," she argued. "What if something goes wrong? What about Hudson?" Levi took her hands in his gaze steady and reassuring. "Penelope, we can't live like this forever. Hudson deserves a life free from fear, and so do you. We have a chance to end this once and for all." After much deliberation, Penelope agreed to the plan. As they made their final preparations, the stakes couldn't have been higher. Not only were their lives and the future of Culinary Crown on the line, but also the chance for Penelope and Hudson to finally break free from the shadows of their past. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test their resolve, their loyalty, and the bonds they had forged in the face of adversity. As they moved forward, each step fraught with danger and uncertainty, they clung to the hope that on the other side of this ordeal, a brighter future awaited. As the plan to deal with the syndicate threat was being meticulously crafted behind the scenes, Culinary Crown faced an unexpected crisis that thrust Levi into a complex ethical dilemma, testing his principles and leadership. It began on a busy Friday evening when a food critic from a prominent national magazine was dining incognito at the restaurant. Levi, aware of the critic's presence but keeping it under wraps to ensure authentic service, was overseeing the kitchen with his usual attention to detail. Midway through the evening, A young line cook named Elena approached Levi, her face pale with worry. "Chef," she whispered, "I think we have a problem with the halibut." Levi's brow furrowed as he followed Elena to the walk-in refrigerator. Inside, they discovered that a significant portion of the day's fish delivery had begun to spoil, emitting a faint but unmistakable odor. "How did this happen?" Levi demanded, his mind racing through the implications. The halibut was a key component of their signature dish, the very one the food critic had ordered. Elena shook her head, clearly distressed. "I'm not sure, chef. The temperature log shows everything was fine this morning." Levi quickly assembled his senior staff, including Penelope and Marcus, to address the crisis. "We need to make a decision. Fast," he said, the pressure evident in his voice. "We have a full house, including a top critic, and our main dish is compromised." Marcus, ever the pragmatist, suggested a controversial solution. "We still have some halibut that looks and smells fine. If we use it sparingly and mask it with strong seasonings, we might be able to get through the night without anyone noticing." Levi felt a knot form in his stomach at the suggestion. It wasn't just unethical, it was potentially dangerous. But as he looked around at his staff, saw the fear of failure in their eyes, he felt the weight of their expectations bearing down on him. Penelope, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke up. "Levi, you can't seriously be considering this. It goes against everything you stand for, everything this restaurant represents." Her words cut through the tension, reminding Levi of the principles that had guided him throughout his career. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the difficult decision ahead. "No," he said firmly, meeting each of their gazes. "We're not serving any of the halibut. It's too risky, and more importantly, it's wrong. We'll have to improvise." The next hour was a whirlwind of activity as the kitchen staff scrambled to create an alternative dish. Levi worked alongside his team, drawing on all his culinary creativity to craft a new recipe using the ingredients they had on hand. As the newly created dish, a pan-seared sea base with a complex herb crust and vegetable medley, was sent out to the dining room, Levi felt a mix of pride in his team's ability to adapt and anxiety about the potential consequences. The food critic, unaware of the behind-the-scenes drama, seemed to enjoy the meal, even commenting to the server on the innovative flavor combinations. However, as the evening wore on, whispers began to circulate among the diners about the change in menu. By the end of the night, exhaustion mingled with relief in the kitchen. They had managed to serve every customer without compromising on quality or safety, but Levi knew the crisis was far from over. The next morning, Levi called an all-staff meeting. With a heavy heart, he explained the situation to the entire restaurant team, from the sous chefs to the dishwashers. "Last night, we faced a serious challenge," he began. "We discovered an issue with our primary ingredient and had to make a difficult decision. I want you all to know that we chose to prioritize your safety and the integrity of our restaurant over potential profit or prestige." He paused, letting his words sink in. "However, this incident has brought to light some serious issues in our operations. We need to review and improve our quality control processes to ensure this never happens again." As Levi outlined the changes they would implement, stricter temperature checks, more frequent inventory rotations, and additional staff training, he could see emotions of his employees' faces. Some looked relieved at the transparency, others worried about potential repercussions. Penelope, standing at the back of the room, gave Levi an approving nod. Her support strengthened his resolve as he continued. "I understand that last night's events may have shaken your confidence. I want you to know that I take full responsibility for what happened. If there are any consequences from this incident, I will bear them." As the meeting concluded and the staff dispersed to begin their day's work, Levi retreated to his office. The weight of his decision pressed heavily upon him. He knew he had done the right thing ethically, but the potential impact on the restaurant's reputation, and by extension on the livelihoods of his staff, was a burden he felt acutely. A soft knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. It was Marcus, looking uncharacteristically hesitant. "Chef, I wanted to apologize," Marcus began. "Last night, When I suggested using the questionable halibut, I was thinking only of saving face. You showed real leadership by making the tough call." Levi nodded, appreciating the honesty. "Thank you, Marcus. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was the only one I could live with." As Marcus left, Penelope entered, closing the door behind her. She sat across from Levi, her expression a mix of pride and concern. "You did the right thing, Levi," she said softly, "but I can see how much it's weighing on you." Levi sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I keep thinking about the potential fallout. If word gets out about the incident, if that critic decides to write about the menu change, it could seriously damage our reputation. People could lose their jobs, Penelope. People who depend on me." Penelope reached across the desk, placing her hand over Levi's. "Listen to me. What you did last night, the decision you made, that's why these people depend on you. You showed integrity under pressure. That's worth more than any review or rating." Her words provided some comfort, but Levi knew the coming days would be crucial. He would need to be proactive in addressing the incident, both internally and potentially with the public. As if reading his thoughts, Penelope added, "Whatever comes next, we'll face it together. You've stood by me and Hudson through our struggles. Now it's our turn to stand by you." Levi felt a surge of gratitude for Penelope's support. Despite the uncertainty ahead, he knew he had made the right choice. He had protected his customers, upheld his principles, and in doing so set an example for his entire team. As they left the office to face the day ahead, Levi realized that this crisis, while challenging, had reinforced the values at the core of Culinary Crown. It had shown him the strength of his team and the importance of ethical leadership in the face of adversity. The road ahead might be difficult, but Levi was ready to face it, bolstered by the knowledge that he had stayed true to himself and the ideals that had brought him this far. As the dust settled from the restaurant crisis and the ongoing threat from the syndicate loomed in the background, a new dynamic began to emerge among Levi, Penelope and Hudson. The bonds forged through shared adversity had grown stronger, but with this strength came a complexity that none of them had anticipated. One lazy Sunday afternoon, the three of them were enjoying a rare moment of peace in Levi's apartment. Hudson was sprawled on the living room floor, engrossed in a school project, while Levi and Penelope sat at the kitchen island, sipping coffee and discussing menu ideas for the restaurant. As Levi watched Penelope sketch out a new dish concept, he felt a familiar warmth spread through his chest. Her passion for cooking had reignited fully, and with it, she had regained the confidence and creativity that had made her such a formidable chef in her prime. But there was something else too, a deepening of his feelings that went beyond admiration for her culinary skills. Penelope, feeling Levi's gaze on her, looked up and smiled. "What?" she asked, a hint of playfulness in her voice. Levi shook his head, smiling back. "Nothing. It's just good to see you like this. You remind me of the Penelope I first met, but more." A faint blush colored Penelope's cheeks, and for a moment, the air between them seemed charged with unspoken possibilities. But before either could speak, Hudson's voice broke the moment. "Mom, Levi, can you help me with something?" They moved to the living room, kneeling on either side of Hudson to examine his project, a detailed model of a restaurant kitchen for his school's career day. As they worked together, suggesting improvements and sharing stories about real kitchens, Levi was struck by how natural it all felt. The three of them, working and laughing together, felt like family. The realization both thrilled and terrified him. He cared deeply for both Penelope and Hudson, but the nature of that care was becoming increasingly complicated. With Penelope, there was a growing attraction that went beyond their shared history and love of cooking, and Hudson, Levi had come to love the boy as if he were his own son. Later that evening, after Hudson had gone to bed, Levi and Penelope found themselves alone on the balcony, the city lights twinkling below them. Be. A comfortable silence stretched between them until Penelope finally spoke. "Levi," she began, her voice soft but serious, "I need to ask you something." Levi turned to her, his heart rate quickening. "Of course. Anything." Penelope took a deep breath. "What are we doing here? This arrangement, it started as you helping us get back on our feet, but it's become something more, hasn't it? Levi nodded slowly, knowing they had reached a crucial juncture. It has, he admitted. Penelope, I care about you. And Hudson. More than I ever expected to. To Penelope's eyes shimmered in the low light. I care about you too, Levi. But I'm scared. Hudson's already been through so much. If this became something more and it didn't work out. I know, Levi said, understanding her fears. The last thing I want is to hurt either of you. But Penelope, I can't ignore how I feel. Being with you and Hudson, it feels right. It feels like home. Penelope stepped closer, her hand finding Levi's. It feels like home for us too, she whispered. But there's so much at stake. The restaurant, the situation with the syndicate, Hudson's adjustment at school. Is this really the right time to explore, whatever this is between us? Levi squeezed her hand gently. Maybe there's never a perfect time. But I think what we have, this connection, this understanding, it could make us stronger in facing everything else. As they stood there, the possibility of a future together hanging in the air between them, the balcony door slid open. Hudson stood there, looking small and vulnerable in his pajamas. I had a nightmare, he said, his voice trembling slightly. Without hesitation, both Levi and Penelope moved to comfort him. As they led Hudson back to bed, taking turns to soothe his fears and tell him stories until he drifted off to sleep, the complex nature of their relationship crystallized. They were no longer just a chef and his former mentor, or a benefactor in the family he was helping. They had become something more, a unit bound together by shared experiences, mutual care, and a love that defied simple categorization. As they quietly left Hudson's room, Levi and Penelope exchanged a look of understanding. The conversation they had started on the balcony was far from over, but it had evolved. Whatever they decided about their personal relationship, they both knew that Hudson's well-being had to be at the forefront of their considerations. We'll figure this out, Levi said softly, his hand finding the small of Penelope's back in a gesture of support. Penelope nodded, leaning into him slightly. Together, she added, the word carrying the weight of a promise. As they returned to the living room, the challenges they faced, both personal and external, loomed large. But there was also a sense of hope, a feeling that whatever came their way, they would face it as a unit. The journey ahead was uncertain, filled with potential pitfalls and difficult decisions. But as Levi looked at Penelope, saw the mix of vulnerability and strength in her eyes, he knew that exploring this new dimension of their relationship was a risk worth taking. Together, they had already overcome so much. Perhaps together they could build something beautiful and lasting, a family forged in the fires of adversity and bound by love, respect, and a shared passion for life. As Levi, Penelope, and Hudson navigated their evolving relationships, a new challenge emerged that would test their values and commitment to social responsibility. It began on a cold autumn morning when Hudson, on his way to school, noticed a group of homeless individuals huddled in an alley near Culinary Crown. That evening during dinner, Hudson broached the subject. "Mom, Levi," he began hesitantly, "I saw something today that made me feel weird." Levi and Penelope exchanged glances before encouraging Hudson to continue. There were these people sleeping in the alley near the restaurant. They looked so cold and hungry. Can't we do something to help them? Penelope reached out to squeeze her son's hand, pride shining in her eyes. "That's very compassionate of you, Hudson. What do you think we could do?" Hudson's face lit up with enthusiasm. "Well, we have all this great food at the restaurant. Maybe we could give them some." Levi nodded thoughtfully. "That's not a bad idea, Hudson. In fact, it's something I've been considering for a while. What do you think, Penelope? Should we start a program to feed the homeless in our area?" Penelope's eyes sparkled with excitement. "I think it's a wonderful idea. It would be a great way to give back to the community that supported us." Over the next few weeks, Levi, Penelope, and Hudson worked together to develop a plan. They decided to start small, offering free meals to the homeless in the alley twice a week after the restaurant's closing hours. Hudson helped design simple, nutritious menus that could be prepared quickly and in large quantities. As word spread about Culinary Crown's initiative, the response was overwhelming. More and more people showed up for meals, and soon the alley became too small to accommodate everyone safely. Levi approached the issue with his characteristic determination. He reached out to local community centers and churches, proposing a partnership to expand the program. With their help, Culinary Crown began offering meals at multiple locations throughout the city. Penelope took charge of coordinating volunteers, many of whom were Culinary Crown staff members who eagerly donated their time. She also developed a training program to teach basic cooking skills to those interested, hoping to provide them with employable skills. Hudson, inspired by the impact they were making, started a fundraising campaign at his school. He organized bake sales and charity events, raising money to buy warm clothing and blankets for those in need. However, as the program grew, so did the challenges. Some of Culinary Crown's high-end clientele expressed discomfort with the increased presence of homeless individuals near the restaurant. Additionally, the local business association raised concerns about the impact on tourism and property values. Levi found himself facing a difficult decision. The program was making a real difference in people's lives, but it was also potentially threatening the restaurant's bottom line. During a tense meeting with the business association, Levi stood his ground. "I understand your concerns," he said firmly, "but I cannot in good conscience turn my back on people in need. Culinary Crown has been successful because of this community's support. It's our responsibility to give back." His stance earned him both admirers and critics. Some praised his commitment to social responsibility, while others accused him of being naive and jeopardizing the local economy. The situation came to a head when a prominent food critic published a scathing review of Culinary Crown, focusing not on the food but on the unsavory elements the restaurant was attracting to the area. As Levi, Penelope, and Hudson sat around the kitchen table, discussing the fallout from the review, they realized they were at a crossroads. "Maybe we should scale back the program," Penelope suggested reluctantly, "just until things calm down." Levi shook his head. "If we back down now, we're sending the message that these people's lives are less important than our reputation or profits. I can't do that." Hudson, who had been listening intently, spoke up. "In school, we learned about people who stood up for what was right, even when it was hard. Isn't that what we're doing?" Levi and Penelope exchanged a look of pride and resolve. "You're absolutely right," Hudson Levi said. "We're not giving up. In fact, we're going to double down." In the weeks that followed, Levi launched a media campaign to raise awareness about homelessness in Chicago. He invited journalists to volunteer at their meal services, showcasing the human stories behind the statistics. Penelope reached out to other restaurants in the city, challenging them to join their efforts. The tide of public opinion began to turn. Other businesses in the area, seeing the positive impact and good publicity, started their own outreach programs. The mayor's office took notice, inviting Levi to participate in a task force on addressing homelessness in the city. As Culinary Crown's reputation grew, not just for its exquisite cuisine but for its commitment to social justice, Levi, Penelope, and Hudson found themselves at the forefront of a movement. They had taken a stand for what they believed in, and in doing so, had not only helped those in need but had also strengthened their bond as a family and their connection to their community. The challenges were far from over, but together they were making a real difference, one meal at a time. Just as Culinary Crown was riding high on the wave of positive publicity from their homeless outreach program, disaster struck. It began with a seemingly innocuous health inspection, routine for any restaurant in Chicago. However, what the inspectors found would shake Culinary Crown to its core. The day started like any other, with Levi overseeing the morning prep and Penelope experimenting with new recipes in the test kitchen. The health inspector, a stern-faced woman named Ms. Rodriguez, arrived unannounced just before the lunch rush. At first, everything seemed to be going smoothly. Ms. Rodriguez methodically worked her way through the kitchen, nodding approvingly at the cleanliness of the work surface and the proper storage of ingredients. But as she reached the walk-in refrigerator, her expression changed. "Mr. Taylor," she called, her voice sharp with concern. "Could you explain this?" Levi hurried over, his heart sinking as he saw what had caught the inspector's attention. In a corner of the refrigerator, partially hidden behind some boxes, was a small pool of what appeared to be meat juices. Worse, there were clear signs of mold growth. "I don't understand," Levy stammered, genuinely shocked. "We have strict cleaning protocols. This shouldn't be possible." But as Rodriguez continued her inspection, more issues came to light. Several containers of prepared food were improperly labeled, making it impossible to determine how long they had been stored. A box of produce showed signs of pest damage, and most alarmingly, the temperature log for the refrigerator showed several instances where it had risen above safe levels. By the time the inspection was complete, Levi felt as if the ground had been pulled out from under him. Rodriguez's report was damning, multiple critical violations that posed an immediate health risk. She had no choice but to shut down Culinary Crown until the issues could be addressed. As word spread, the media descended like vultures. Local news vans parked outside the restaurant, their reporters eager for a statement. Social media exploded with speculation and accusations, with former guests wondering if they had been exposed to foodborne illnesses. Inside Culinary Crown, chaos reigned. Staff members whispered among themselves, wondering if they would still have jobs. Levi called an emergency meeting, struggling to maintain his composure as he addressed his team. "I know you're all worried and confused," he began, his voice hoarse with stress. "I want you to know that we're going to get to the bottom of this. In the meantime, I promise that all of you will continue to receive your full wages while we work to reopen." As the staff filed out, Penelope approached Levy, her face a mask of concern. "Levi, how could this have happened? We've always been so careful." But Levi shook his head, at a loss for words. "I don't know, Penelope, but I intend to find out." Over the next few days, Levy threw himself into investigating the cause of the hygiene failures. He reviewed security footage, interviewed staff members, and pored over maintenance records. What he uncovered was deeply troubling. It appeared that in the chaos of managing the restaurant, the homeless outreach program, and their personal lives, some crucial oversight had been missed. A night cleaning crew, hired through a contractor, had been cutting corners, failing to properly sanitize certain areas. The refrigerator malfunction had been reported, but the follow-up had fallen through the cracks. The most shocking discovery came when Levi reviewed the delivery logs. Several recent shipments of produce and meat had come from a new supplier, one that offered significantly lower prices. Upon investigation, Levi found that this supplier had a history of health violations that had somehow been overlooked in their vetting process. As the full picture emerged, Levi felt a crushing weight of responsibility. In their eagerness to cut costs and redirect funds to their outreach programs, they had compromised on quality control. The very success of their charitable efforts had, ironically, contributed to this crisis. With a heavy heart, Levi called a press conference to address the situation. Standing before a sea of cameras and microphones, he took a deep breath and began. "Good afternoon. As the owner and head chef of Culinary Crown, I stand before you today to take full responsibility for the health code violations found in our restaurant. There is no excuse for what happened. We failed in our most basic duty, to ensure the safety and well-being of our guests." Levi went on to detail the steps they were taking to rectify the situation, a complete overhaul of their sanitation procedures, terming and machinery of the Neglin Cleaning Company, a new, rigorous vetting process for all suppliers. He also announced that Culinary Crown would be hiring an independent food safety consultant to conduct regular audits once they reopened. "I know that we have broken your trust," Levi concluded, his voice thick with emotion. "I can only ask for the opportunity to earn it back. Culinary Crown will reopen only when we can guarantee the highest standards of food safety and hygiene. And when we do, I invite all of you to come and see for yourselves the changes we've made." As Levi stepped away from the podium, he felt a mix of relief and apprehension. He had been honest, taken responsibility, and laid out a plan for redemption. But would it be enough? Back at the restaurant, Levi found Penelope and Hudson waiting for him. Hudson rushed forward, wrapping his arms around Levi's waist. "You did great, Levi," the boy said, looking up at him with admiration. "You told the truth, just like you always taught me to do." Penelope stepped forward, placing a comforting hand on Levi's shoulder. "He's right, you know. You handled that with grace and integrity. We'll get through this together." Levi managed a small smile, drawing strength from their support. He knew that the road ahead would be difficult. Rebuilding Culinary Crown's reputation would take time and enormous effort. There would be financial challenges, skeptical customers to win back, and rigorous inspections to pass. But as he stood there with Penelope and Hudson by his side, Levi felt a glimmer of hope. They had faced challenges before and come out stronger. This crisis, as devastating as it was, could be an opportunity, a chance to rebuild Culinary Crown on an even stronger foundation of quality, integrity, and social responsibility. With renewed determination, Levi squared his shoulders. They had work to do, and he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. In the wake of the food hygiene scandal, Culinary Crown stood silent and empty, its once bustling kitchen now eerily quiet. Levi spent long hours there alone, meticulously cleaning every surface and reviewing every procedure, as if by sheer force of will he could erase the stain on the restaurant's reputation. It was on one such evening, as Levi scrubbed furiously at an already spotless countertop, that Penelope and Hudson arrived. They found him in the kitchen, his eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep, his usually immaculate chef's whites rumpled and stained. "Levi," Penelope called softly, a voice filled with concern. "This has to stop. You can't keep punishing yourself like this." Levi looked up, startled by their presence. "I have to make sure everything is perfect. We can't afford any more mistakes." Hudson stepped forward, his young face serious. "But you're not alone, Levi. We're here to help. We're a family, remember?" In those words, spoken with such sincerity, broke through Levi's fog of guilt and self-recrimination. He sat heavily on a nearby stool, the weight of the past few days finally catching up with him. Penelope and Hudson exchanged a glance, a silent communication passing between them. Then, with quiet determination, they set to work. Penelope donned an apron and began to review the new safety protocols Levi had drafted, her experienced eye catching details he had overlooked in his exhaustion. She made notes, suggesting improvements and simplifications that would make the procedures easier for staff to follow consistently. Meanwhile, Hudson, armed with a tablet, started researching the latest innovations in food safety technology. His youthful enthusiasm for gadgets proved invaluable as he discovered new tools and systems that could help prevent future issues. As the night wore on, the kitchen came alive with a different kind of energy. Ideas flowed freely, with Levi gradually joining in, his creative spark reigniting as he collaborated with Penelope and Hudson. By dawn, they had not only refined the safety protocols, but had also brainstormed a series of new initiatives. They planned to implement a state-of-the-art inventory management system to ensure proper rotation of ingredients. They devised a comprehensive staff training program that went beyond basic food safety to instill a culture of quality and responsibility throughout the restaurant. But perhaps most importantly, they had come up with a way to turn this crisis into an opportunity for positive change. And inspired by their experiences with the homeless outreach program, they decided to launch a community food safety education initiative. "We could offer free workshops," Penelope suggested, her eyes bright with excitement. "Teach people about safe food handling at home, how to properly store and prepare ingredients." Levi nodded, building on the idea. "And we could partner with local schools, introduce young people to the importance of food safety, maybe even spark some interest in culinary careers." Hudson, not to be outdone, chimed in. "We could make it fun too, like create a mobile app with games that teach food safety rules." As the sun rose, casting a warm glow through the kitchen windows, Levi looked at Penelope and Hudson with a mixture of gratitude and awe. In his darkest moment, they had not only stood by him, but had helped transform his despair into hope. "I don't know what I'd do without you two," Levi said, his voice thick with emotion. Penelope smiled, reaching out to squeeze his hand. "That's what family is for, Levi. We face challenges together, With renewed energy and a clear plan of action, they set about the task of rebuilding Culinary Crown's reputation. Levi reached out to his contacts in the culinary world, inviting renowned food safety experts to review and endorse their new procedures. Penelope took charge of retraining the staff, infusing each session with her passion for quality and her belief in second chances. Hudson, much to his delight, was put in charge of developing the educational outreach program. He worked tirelessly on creating engaging materials for kids, determined to make food safety cool and accessible to his peers. As news of their efforts spread, the public's perception began to shift. Local media, initially skeptical, started running positive stories about Culinary Crown's comprehensive response to the crisis. Food safety advocates praised their proactive approach and community-focused initiatives. The day of Culinary Crown's reopening arrived with a mix of nervousness and excitement. Levi, Penelope, and Hudson stood together at the entrance, ready to welcome the first guests. To their surprise, a line had formed outside, filled not just with curious onlookers but with loyal patrons eager to show their support. As the doors opened and people streamed in, Levi felt a surge of emotion. This wasn't just a restaurant reopening, it was a testament to the power of resilience, innovation, and the unbreakable bonds of chosen family. The first service was a resounding success. Guests raved not only about the food, but also about the visible improvements in hygiene and safety procedures. Many expressed interest in the upcoming community workshops, eager to learn from Culinary Crown's experience. As the last guest departed and the staff began the closing routine, Levi gathered everyone in the kitchen. Looking around at the faces of his team, at Penelope and Hudson standing proudly beside him, he felt a profound sense of gratitude and purpose. "Thank you all," he said, his voice steady and sincere. "What we've accomplished here goes beyond just reopening a restaurant. We've shown that with integrity, hard work, and the support of a true family, we can turn our greatest challenges into opportunities for growth and positive change." As applause filled the kitchen, Levi knew that Culinary Crown was entering a new chapter, one built on a foundation stronger than ever before. Forged in the fires of adversity and shaped by the unwavering support of those he held dear. As Culinary Crown flourished in its new incarnation, the looming threat from the syndicate, momentarily overshadowed by the restaurant crisis, resurfaced with a vengeance. One quiet afternoon, as Levi was reviewing the books in his office, a nondescript envelope was slipped under his door. Inside was a single photo of Hudson walking to school, accompanied by a chilling message: "Time's up. Pay what you owe, or the boy pays the price." Levi's blood ran cold. The carefully laid plans to deal with the syndicate threat suddenly seemed inadequate in the face of this direct threat to Hudson's safety. With shaking hands, he called Penelope and Marcus to his office. As Penelope absorbed the gravity of the situation, her face paled. "We need to go to the police," she insisted, her voice trembling. Marcus shook his head grimly. "The syndicate has informants everywhere. If we involve the authorities, we risk escalating the situation." Levi, his mind racing, made a decision. "We stick to our original plan, but we accelerate the timeline. Marcus, contact your connections. We need to set up the sting operation now." Over the next 48 hours, Levi, Penelope, and Marcus worked tirelessly to put their plan into motion. Using Marcus's underworld connections, they set up a meeting with a high-ranking member of the syndicate, ostensibly to negotiate the debt. The rendezvous was set for an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Chicago. Unbeknownst to the syndicate, the warehouse had been rigged with hidden cameras and microphones, courtesy of a private security firm Levi had hired. The plan was to gather enough evidence of the syndicate's illegal activities to force them to back off, without directly implicating Penelope or Hudson. On the night of the meeting, tension was high. Levi insisted on going alone, despite Penelope's tearful protests. "I can't risk anything happening to you or Hudson," he said, cupping her face gently. "I promise I'll be careful." As Levi entered the dimly lit warehouse, he was met by 3 men in suits, their expressions cold and businesslike. The leader, A silver-haired man with piercing eyes stepped forward. "Us." "Mr. Taylor," he said, his voice smooth as silk, but with an underlying threat, "I believe you have something for us." Levi stood his ground, his heart pounding but his voice steady. "Before we discuss any payment, I want assurances. No more threats, no more harassment. Penelope and Hudson are to be left alone." The man chuckled darkly. "You're in no position to make demands, Mr. Taylor. The debt must be paid, with interest. Unless, of course, you'd prefer we collect from the boy." At that moment, Levi knew he had them. The threat, caught on camera and audio, was the evidence they needed. But before he could respond, chaos erupted. The doors of the warehouse burst open, and a team of FBI agents swarmed in, guns drawn. "FBI, everybody freeze." In the ensuing confusion, Levi realized that their plan had taken an unexpected turn. As he was escorted out of the warehouse, he saw Marcus talking with one of the agents. An understanding dawned. Marcus had taken the extra precaution of involving federal authorities, ensuring that the syndicate would be dealt with permanently. Hours later, as the dust settled, Levi, Penelope, and Hudson sat in an FBI safe house, still processing the night's events. An agent debriefed them, explaining that they had been building a case against the syndicate for months, and Marcus's information had been the final piece they needed. "You're safe now," the agent assured them. "The syndicate's leadership has been arrested, and we've seized their assets. They won't be bothering you or anyone else again." As the agent left, Penelope turned to Levi, tears of relief streaming down her face. "It's over," she whispered. "It's really over." Levi pulled her and Hudson into a tight embrace, feeling the weight of years of fear and uncertainty finally lifting. "Yes," he said softly, "we're free." In the days that followed, life began to take on a new rhythm. Without the shadow of the syndicate looming over them, Penelope seemed to stand taller, laugh more freely. Hudson, no longer burdened by the secret fear that had been his constant companion, threw himself into his studies and his role in Culinary Crown's community outreach programs with renewed enthusiasm. Levi, for his part, felt a profound sense of peace. The restaurant was thriving, their family was safe, and the future stretched out before them, full of possibility. One evening, as they sat on the balcony of Levi's apartment, watching the sun set over the Chicago skyline, Penelope turned to him with a serious expression. "Levi," she began, her voice soft but determined, "I've been thinking. About us, about our future." Levi's heart skipped a beat. "What about it?" he asked, trying to keep his voice casual. Penelope took a deep breath. "When you faced the syndicate, when you put yourself in danger to protect us, I realized something. Life is too short, too precious to waste. I love you, Levi. I think I have for a long time." Levi felt a surge of joy, so intense it was almost painful. He took Penelope's hands in his eyes shining with emotion. "I love you too, Penelope. You and Hudson, you're my family, my home." As they leaned in to share a tender kiss, a small voice interrupted them. Finally, they turned to see Hudson standing in the doorway, a huge grin on his face. "I was wondering how long it would take you two to figure it out," he said cheekily. Laughing, Levi and Penelope beckoned Hudson to join them. As they sat together watching the last rays of sunlight paint the sky in brilliant hues, Levi felt a profound sense of gratitude. They had faced seemingly insurmountable challenges, weathered storms that threatened to tear them apart, but had emerged stronger, more united. The journey had been long and fraught with danger, but as Levi looked at Penelope and Hudson, he knew that every struggle had been worth it. They had not only survived, but had built something beautiful and lasting, a family bound by love, respect, and a shared passion for life. As night fell over Chicago, the lights of Culinary Crown glowed in the distance, a beacon of hope and new beginnings. For Levi, Penelope, and Hudson, it was more than just a restaurant. It was a symbol of their resilience, their bond, and the bright future that lay ahead, a future they would face together as a family. In the months that followed the resolution of the syndicate threat, Levi, Penelope, Hudson settled into a new rhythm of life, one filled with the warmth of family and the excitement of new beginnings. Culinary Crown continued to thrive, its reputation not just restored, but enhanced by the transparent way they had handled the hygiene crisis and their ongoing commitment to community outreach. One sunny Saturday morning, the three of them stood together in front of a small storefront just a few blocks from Culinary Crown. A sign in the window read, "Coming soon, Crown's Kitchen, a community culinary school." "Are you sure about this?" Penelope asked, a mix of excitement and nervousness in her voice. Levi nodded, his arm around her shoulders. "Absolutely, this is the next step, a place where we can share our love of cooking with those who need it most." Hudson, practically bouncing with enthusiasm, chimed in, "And where I can teach my food safety app to real people." The idea for Crown's Kitchen had grown out of their experiences over the past year. It would be a place where they could offer free culinary training to unemployed and at-risk individuals, teaching not just cooking skills, but also food safety, nutrition, and the basics of running a food service business. As they stepped inside the empty space, Levi could already envision the gleaming kitchens, the eager students, the lives that would be changed. It was more than just an extension of their restaurant. It was a way to pay forward all the second chances they had been given. Over the next few weeks, the storefront was a hive of activity. Levi oversaw the installation of professional-grade equipment, much of it donated by grateful suppliers who had stood by Culinary Crown during its crisis. Penelope developed the curriculum, drawing on her years of experience and her recent journey of rediscovery. Hudson, true to his word, worked with a team of young programmers to refine his food safety app, making it a cornerstone of the school's technology-integrated approach. The grand opening of Crown's Kitchen was a community event. The mayor, impressed by their initiatives, cut the ribbon. Local media covered the story, praising the innovative approach to job training and community support. But for Levi, the most touching moment came when he saw the faces of their first students, men and women of all ages, many of whom had been through hardships similar to what Penelope had experienced, all eager for a chance to change their lives. As Levi addressed the gathered crowd, he felt a surge of emotion. "Welcome to Crown's Kitchen," he began, his voice strong and clear. "This school is more than just a place to learn about cooking. It's a place of second chances, of new beginnings. Because food is more than sustenance. It's about community, family, and the dignity of creating something meaningful with your own hands." He paused, looking at Penelope and Hudson standing proudly beside him. "I stand here today because someone once gave me a chance when I was just a kid with a dream. Now it's our turn to pass that opportunity on to others." As the first classes began, the school quickly became a hub of activity and hope. Students who had never held a chef's knife learned to craft gourmet meals. Those who had known only struggle and hardship discovered the joy of creating something beautiful and delicious. Many graduates went on to find jobs in Chicago's thriving restaurant scene, while others were inspired to start their own culinary ventures. One evening, as Levi, Penelope, and Hudson sat in their living room after a long day at the school, Hudson asked a question that made them both pause. "Are we going to be a real family now, like officially?" Levi and Penelope exchanged a look, a silent conversation passing between them. Then Levi turned to Hudson with a smile. "Hudson, we've been a real family for a long time now. But if you're asking what I think you're asking," he took Penelope's hand, his eyes shining with love and certainty. "So what do you say, Penelope? Should we make it official?" To Penelope's eyes filled with happy tears as she nodded. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes to all of it." As they embraced, all three of them laughing and crying at once, Levi felt a profound sense of completion. The journey had been long and often difficult, filled with unexpected twists and daunting challenges. But every step had led them here, to this moment of joy and promise. In Culinary Crown and Crown's Kitchen, they had created more than just successful businesses. They had built a legacy of compassion, resilience, and the transformative power of second chances. And in each other they had found the love, support, and belonging that each of them had longed for. As they began to excitedly discuss wedding plans and adoption papers, Levy knew that whatever challenges the future might hold, they would face them together. For in the end, the greatest dish they had created was not found on any menu, but in the bonds of family they had forged, a recipe for love, hope, and new beginnings that would nourish them for years to come. In life's kitchen, we all face burnt dishes and spilled ingredients. But it's not about the perfection of the meal, it's about who we choose to cook with. Remember, family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the people who pick you up when you're at your lowest, who believe in you when you've lost faith in yourself. It's those who stand by your side through the fires of adversity and the sweetness of success. At every scar, every failure, every moment of doubt, these are the secret ingredients that give your life its unique flavor. Embrace them. Learn from them. Let them make you stronger, kinder, more compassionate. And when you find success, don't forget to set an extra place at your table. Share your bounty, your knowledge, your love. For in giving, we truly receive. A life will always throw unexpected ingredients into your pot. It's up to you to decide whether they'll spoil your dish or make it extraordinary. So keep cooking, keep loving, keep believing. Your masterpiece is still in the making, and the best is yet to come. This message aims to touch on the key emotional themes of the story: resilience, the power of chosen family, learning from adversity, giving back to others, and maintaining hope for the future. And if this story touched your heart and resonated with you, we'd love to hear from you. Simply leave a comment with the number 1 to let us know you enjoyed it. Curious about what happens next in Levi, Penelope, and Hudson's journey? Drop a 2 in the comments and we'll know you're eager for part 2. So, your thoughts and opinions matter to us. If there's any part of the story you'd like to discuss or perhaps respectfully disagree with, please share your perspective. We value your insights and believe they can enrich our storytelling. Lastly, if you'd like to support our team and ensure you don't miss future stories, consider subscribing to our channel. Your support fuels our passion for bringing these touching narratives to life. Thank you for being part of our storytelling community. Together we can explore the depths of human experience, one story at a time. This message encourages engagement through comments, hints at a potential sequel, invites constructive feedback, and subtly promotes channel subscription, all while maintaining a respectful and appreciative tone towards the audience.